Commissar Holt. I've been trying to speak to you for days. Listen, we're having some work done on the house at the moment, so the long and the short of it is I haven't been able to get into the office to paint any miniatures or film any battle reports. But instead, I thought I could film this playthrough of a classic PC game. It's a bit of a setback, I know, but I thought it could be fun.
Your setbacks, Pachenko, are due to your inadequacies as planetary overlord and military leader. Be thankful it is known that there is no disloyalty on your part. It will weigh in your favor, should you survive.
What on earth you...
That pompous fool. Oh, we'll have to move quickly to save any of his forces. The longer he's in control, the more troops we'll lose. We need every living man we can get.
Hi, I'm Ed, you're watching Minisodes, and this is my final Liberation playthrough. Warboss Skrull has crashed his Space Hulk into Volostad and is giving the planetary defense forces there a right good kick-in. It's up to me, the player, under the rather terrifying gaze of Commissar Holt, to see the orcs off, so that the Imperium can resume its own brand of tyranny over the citizens of Volostad. Battles take place across tactical maps, featuring cities, deserts, and industrial zones, and this handy strategic view allows me to spend resources and plan my next move. The Liberation of Volostad, Part 1. Fighting each other. The first mission is to seize a landing ground from which the Imperial reinforcements can arrive en masse, and who better to do this than the legendary Space Marines of the Ultramarines chapter. Kitted out with a Thunderhawk, a squadron each of Predators and Whirlwinds, along with a bunch of tactical squads, the final liberation was on. Commencing with what some might say was a foolhardy, but I say daring deep strike, I dumped my Marines via Thunderhawk right on top of the Orc forces. The objective turned into a veritable bloodbath, with Orcs and Marines gunning each other down as the Whirlwinds and Predators drove off the Orc reinforcements. Like in Epic, Marine toughness doesn't really translate into resilience or high armor, but into high morale, meaning that they can take a beating without running away. And a beating they took. I even lost my Thunderhawk to the guns of an Orc buggy.
Very impressive, Agrippa.
It was in the Emperor's glory, Commissar Holt.
But the Marines prevailed. After this glorious victory, the Marines took to their dropships, leaving it up to the newly arrived Mordian Iron Guard to secure the spaceport. Being a spaceport, essentially a big open landing field, there's no real cover to speak of, so both my tactical and heavy guard platoons raced forwards to secure a good overwatching position as close to the central objective as possible. The bombards are fearsome artillery pieces and just leveled everything in sight whilst the Mordians advanced. With the Mordians in position, a mighty firefight erupted between the Bad Moons defending the spaceport and the Imperials. And after a rather one-sided exchange, the Mordians carried the day, and the spaceport was back in Imperial hands.
The recapturing of the spaceport at Kotzlev is complete. I await your further direction.
With the spaceport secure, some Talons were bussed in to aid my efforts. After a quick refit, I sent the Mordians to open up a northern front. This involved a clash with a contingent of evil sons that had set up camp in a small town. Taking no chances, I systematically demolished any building in my path with the bombards, then sent the infantry in to secure the objective on the road. The evil sons counterattacked with squadrons of bowel burners. Under relentless barrage and sustained heavy weapons squad fire, the bowel burners were dealt with, but not before they gave a few unfortunate Mordian infantrymen a nasty dose of promethium. With the town secured, the Talon regiment rode out east to Malenkov province. The Talon armor came into its own here, with a trio of Leman Russes securing the center and mowing down Goth Orcs as they went, whilst Basilisks rained fire on Orc lungburster tanks. The Orcs were completely outranged in this skirmish and were crushed under the steel tread of Imperial armor. I stayed put for a couple of turns and used the resources gathered to purchase the Mordians a Basilisk battery and another platoon of infantry. Then, forwards for the Emperor, into the next Orc-held town. The mechanized infantry raced forwards, whilst the heavy weapons platoon covered the main road from the north. The Chimeras soon came under intense fire from the town, and I winced as a fully loaded Chimera went up in flames, causing one of the cowardly drivers to about turn back to Imperial lines. Now that the Orcs had revealed themselves, the newly acquired Basilisks tore into the Orc positions, turning their armor to scrap. The Chimeras drove forwards, and the Mordians thundered down the ramps to take up fighting positions on the edge of the town, as the huge bombard shells turned Orc-held buildings to rubble. Orc armor continued to pummel the Chimeras, as the Basilisks worked hard to silence their guns. Orc warbikes then surged into view, but the heavy and tactical platoons were ready for them. With lungburster tanks bearing down on them, a Mordian tactical platoon bravely moved into the center of the town to seize the objective, their lasguns scything down the supporting Orc infantry, whilst the multi-lasers of the Chimeras anchored their flank from encroaching mobs of Orcs. Soon the Orcs were in full flight, and another town was under Imperial control. Meanwhile, the tanks of the Talon continued their rolling advance east into the farms of Volistad. 2 squadrons of lungburster tanks emerged from the ruins of a granary, and the first tank duel of the campaign began. Soon there was only one Russ left, so the Basilisks took over, knocking out another lungburster and causing another one to go into reverse. In the next turn, the artillery claimed another, and the remaining Russ had its revenge, scratching another 2 and filling the courtyard with burning scrap. The Talon had taken some losses, but the farm was theirs. Colonel Ivanovich then brought me some valuable intel about a Gargant construction site. Yeah, maybe try whispering next time? As I took a turn to gather resources, the game hit me with an Orc counterattack.
Lord Commander, the Orcs have launched a massive counterattack.
The Orcs were intent on retaking the farm from my depleted Talon, causing considerable concern as they began dropping pulsar rockets in their midst. Soon the infantry was pulling back, and I discovered that a mob of Goths was creeping around the perimeter wall to seize the objective. My last Leman Russ then acted as a pillbox, gunning down a score of Orcs with its sponson heavy bolters, which are absolutely lethal at this range. Soon the Russ and remaining Chimeras were on the counterattack, and sent the Orcs reeling, but not before a close encounter. With the Orcs driven off, it was time to repair and refit my weary regiments. The Mordians had earned themselves the distinction of receiving the armoured bulwark of a Baneblade to aid their reconquest of Kirponos. The Super Heavy promptly rolled onto the objective and annihilated the light Orc vehicles in its path, sending the Orcs into full retreat. The Mordian infantry followed in its wake, thoroughly chuffed with this new acquisition, as it rolled onwards, destroying a couple of battle wagons with las cannon fire. The city had fallen, and I was making good progress. Or so I thought.
I have come to this place in order to speak to you where no others might overhear. Suffice it to say, I have served under 2 Lord Commanders militant on a single campaign in the past.
Under pressure from the Lord Commissar and overconfident from previous successes, the Mordians got a thorough mauling in their next battle. My infantry were cut to pieces in a crossfire, whilst gobsmashers moved through my exposed flank to threaten the Basilisks. Only the Baneblade averted disaster, single-handedly rolling into the center objective, then heading north to secure the second, dealing enough casualties as it went to narrowly secure a rather Pyrrhic victory. This meant I simply had to take a few turns to bring my forces back to strength, a decision the Lord Commissar took exception
We
to.
must take direct, decisive action. We can afford to lose no more ground. I remain your loyal servant, Lord Commander.
Despite the tongue-lashing, the Leman Russ squadron was replenished, and a squadron of Hellhounds joined the Talon. These flame tanks proved useful for clearing the buildings of the next town, as the Basilisks dealt with yet more lungburster tanks. The Russes clashed with Orc armor, as gouts of Prometheum dealt with the Orc infantry. Orc Stormboys then desperately engaged the Leman Russes in close assault, and the Leman Russ crew's gunnery outstripped the Orc armor once more, littering the town with burnt-out wrecks. The Hellhounds drove down the left flank, emptying their fuel tanks into any Orcs they found in the open. After some rather foolhardy resistance, the Orcs were vanquished, and the double eagles spun once more. Soon the Talon tanks would reach the deserts that they were accustomed to fighting in. Now, with the output of so many provinces under my control, I was able to call upon Titans, adding 2 Warhounds to loom over my Mordian regiment. Together, they fought to retake the capital. The marksmanship of the Warhounds was questionable, however, and the Mordians fought desperately against swarms of Orc bikers. But despite these setbacks, soon the Warhounds stood upon the northern objective, surrounded by burning bikes, whilst the Baneblade brutally cut down mobs of Gretchen to secure the southern objective. Commissar Holt was now free to divert some of his frustration on the planetary governor. Well, thank you for watching my playthrough of this 90s gem. As I mentioned at the beginning, this video was basically a product of my painting table being off limits this week. So with that out of the way, I am pleased to say it is back to painting and playing 2nd edition 40k for the foreseeable. That said, if you enjoyed this video and would like to see my continued exploits on the beleaguered planet Volistad, then do let me know in the comments. A massive thank you to my Patreon community for enabling me to make these videos part-time. Patrons to the channel receive a monthly podcast, the occasional early bird, and access to the wonderful Minisodes community Discord. Thanks for watching, and happy hobbying!